Week, CNN freaking out, panicking that black voters are beginning to break towards Donald Trump in pretty meaningful numbers. Take a listen. CNN's Harry Enton.
Or Biden and Trump among black voters compare where we were at this point in 2020, compare where we are now. You know, at this point, look at this. In 2020, Joe Biden was getting 86% of the African-American vote. Look at where it is now. It's 70%. That's a 16-point drop, John. And more than that, it's not just that Joe Biden is losing ground, it's that Donald Trump is gaining ground. You go from 7%, single digits at this point in 2020, to now 21%. And again, John, I keep looking for signs that this is going to go back to normal, and I don't see it.
Yeah, back to normal. Remember, in American history, normal was black Americans supporting the Republican Party. So in a sense, it is going back to normal. Here to discuss this is a gentleman who was with President Trump this past weekend in Detroit. Lorenzo Sewell is on the phone. He's a senior pastor at the 180 Church and was a part of a big roundtable with the former president again this past weekend. Sir, good to have you with us.
I'm so grateful to be here with you.
Very nice to have you. First and foremost, that audio that I just played from CNN, the media keep acting like it's a gigantic mystery. Why is this happening? They're looking for it to go back to, quote, normal. Can you give them an answer?
Well, what President Trump is doing is he is becoming a prototype of what every Republican candidate can do, and that's just become president. Because you mentioned how historically the Republican Party, they were black Americans, but most people are ahistorical, right? So today is Juneteenth, and what every Republican candidate should be doing is be talking about Willie Mays. They need to be talking about how the Republican Party was started in 1854 to actually go against slavery. And President Trump, he's doing that. He's becoming president in places where poverty is.
So you mentioned that this weekend, too, that this is not something that you've seen from even President Obama. You definitely are not seeing it from President Biden, but you are seeing it from President Trump, that he's going into communities, meeting people where they are and asking them for their vote.
It's brilliant. I mean, President Obama, did he come to Detroit? Yes. But he went to places that typically aren't heard. Our specific community has a methadone clinic that is right next to our church that serves 500 people that have been generationally addicted. We have human trafficking literally happening openly in our community. And typically people that are in privilege, people that have access, I mean, black and white, they typically don't feel comfortable in settings like that, right? So when President Trump says, you know what, I don't want to come and speak, I actually want to come and listen, you're going to see those numbers continue to climb.
I know I'm of the opinion. My suspicion is that the media often treat black voters as if they're alien and that they have some sort of unusual needs that everyone else doesn't have. And my view is that I think everyone in the end, Americans are all kind of the same on the basics. We want an economy that works for us. We don't want our jobs to disappear. We don't want to be poorer. We don't want to be in credit card debt. We don't want to see our borders open. We don't want drugs to ruin our families. These are basic sort of universal expectations. How much of that is playing a role here in the data we're seeing as more black Americans say they would prefer Trump over Biden?
I really believe that people feel like the Democratic Party is like an abusive marriage, right? So my mother, I saw my mother abused as a child, and I would see my stepfather come home and fight my mother all the time. And then my mother finally made a decision to get away. And I believe that black Americans, they're saying, you know what, Democratic Party, we're moving on. And because of that, those numbers are beginning to increase on the Republican side and decrease on the Democratic side.
You know, one of the realities of the way Democrats campaign among black Americans is to attempt to scare them into submission, perhaps in the way that you're talking about, that abusive relationship. Even the decision by Democrats to advance Juneteenth into becoming a federal holiday, that wasn't a good faith gesture. That was a gesture designed to politicize everything and reinvent history, not to remind people that it was the Democrats were the party of slavery and Jim Crow. Of course, that's not mentioned, as you mentioned nowadays. What do you make of this tactic of constantly trying to scare black voters into submission to vote for Democrats?
Well, I think people are tired, and they're saying terms like no tangibles, no vote. I had the honor of being invited by a pastor into a context that's typically Democrat in the city that we serve, the city of Pontiac, which just is north of Detroit, and they were holding the Democratic Party accountable for not bringing tangibles. And I believe that Black Americans are saying right now, we are tired of you telling us that you are going to help us and you're not. For example, our current president, President Joe Biden, he could have passed the George Floyd bill. He did not do that. And I believe that Black people are saying, I'm tired of it. We want something that works. And the President Trump, he has laid out the Platinum Plan, and every Republican needs to know what that is, because that is a very detailed plan, the only detailed plan that I've seen since Lincoln to help Black people. It is an extremely detailed plan, the Platinum Plan, to disseminate over $500 billion in urban communities so they can be self-sufficient.
So now we're looking at these numbers. You heard at the top, I was playing some of the audio, that President Trump now has in the vicinity of 21% support among Black voters. But as a numerical matter, it's still a minority support against President Biden, who's in the 70% range. What is it going to take for President Trump to get to the point where he's, where the Black vote is going 50-50, or that President Trump, again, brings back a normal Black vote, which is support for the Republican Party? What needs to happen there?
There needs to be three things. The first thing is voter education. Today, President Trump needs to make sure in every major city, churches like mine, have the resources and the access to educate their community, because people want to be educated. We heard that from everyone that came on Saturday. That's number one, voter education. Number two is voter access. People need to know how they can vote. That includes absentee ballots is a thing, right? So they need to understand how they can vote and when they can vote. And then the third thing is voter transportation. People need to be able to know that there are hubs that will get them to the ballot box on the day that they need to vote. If those three things start happening, we will see the numbers climb in ways that we would never have expected.
Lorenzo Sewell, tell us, if you would, a little bit. Again, we're talking to the senior pastor at the 180 Church in Detroit, Michigan. You were just with President Trump this past weekend for that roundtable that you so clearly value, that he was there having that conversation. Can you take us behind the scenes a little bit? What was it like having President Trump there? What were your conversations like?
If you would have bet me $1 that people would have sang happy birthday, if you would have bet me $1 that Mario, the Black man that I was sitting next to, who was incarcerated for 26 years and now is a business owner, when he asked the president that he would make sure that our soldiers were not wearing high heels, if you would have bet me $1 that everyone, right, and the entire church stood up and applauded. If you would have said, Lorenzo, that 4 major rappers from Detroit would have been there saying that they used to be Democrats, but when they own businesses now, that they found out they were Republicans. If you would have bet me $1 that when people rushed President Trump, that he didn't get socially awkward, but that he was there and that he was present. Yep. If you would have bet me that $1 that would have happened, I would have lost that $1 bet.
Yeah, it is remarkable. And that is a good point. He decided to spend his birthday weekend with you, with the people of Detroit. Sure. And it's nice to hear that everybody's saying happy birthday to him. And it is, and one of the other headlines that I saw out of Detroit that really struck me was that the former mayor of Detroit, Democrat Kwame Kilpatrick, has also endorsed President Trump. So it is, President Trump is an unusual force, certainly in American politics, to get headlines like that.
Absolutely. And he pardoned Kwame when President Obama could have done it twice. Yes.
Yeah. So where do you think this all goes from here? What do you expect come Election Day, especially among Black Americans? Do you think that President Trump is going to get the kind of support that brings him across the finish line?
Well, I really believe that the Republicans need to take the momentum of a day like Saturday, right? Yeah. And they need to build on that momentum. They need to educate our community. They need to make sure our community understands when to vote and how to vote. And then they need to make sure they get there to vote. If they do those three things, I believe that you will see momentum happen, because people are tired of being abused. They're tired of their votes being taken for granted, and they're sick and tired of not seeing any tangibles.
All right. Well, Lorenzo Sewell, thank you very much. You had a very unique seat. You do have a unique seat in American politics, and we're grateful for your insight into it today. Thank you very much for joining us.